Welcome to the High Income Business Writing Podcast, helping you propel your writing business to a whole new level. And now, here's your host, Ed Gandia.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the High Income Business Writing Podcast, the number one podcast for freelance writers, copywriters, and solo marketers who want to earn more in less time doing work they love for better clients, with over 1.3 million downloads from listeners just like you across 101 countries. You know, freelancers are great at pushing through obstacles. We hit deadlines, we juggle clients, we squeeze productivity out of thin air. But there's a truth that many of us tend to avoid. Our physical health often pays the price for all this. In today's episode, we're talking about the side of freelancing that rarely gets airtime, which is the slow erosion of our health when the business becomes the only priority. And we're doing this with someone who brings deep experience and grounded wisdom and what I find to be a refreshingly simple approach. And this is my friend, Lucy Rabazza. Lucy is a certified health coach, a personal trainer, and founder of the company Strengthsia. And she is someone who truly understands human nature and behavior and what it takes to make real sustainable changes in your habits. This conversation started because this past summer, I made a real commitment to improving my own health. There wasn't a crisis. There was no big scare. It was just a decision that the way I had been operating wasn't sustainable. I had made efforts in the past, but honestly, these efforts were just DIY. It was just all me, just doing what I could, and there's a limit, I find, to what you can do on your own. So I took a very different approach, and in July, I shifted to a concierge-style medical practice, which is one where you work with a doctor one-on-one. You pay a monthly membership fee. And when you do need to see a doctor and when you're discussing your blood work and making lifestyle changes, you get to meet for a long time. The average doctor in the US, I believe the average time they spend with a patient is about 7 minutes. My doctor spends 30 to 60 minutes with me every time I go see him. So I partnered with him and we started tracking meaningful health metrics, the biomarkers, in other words, that tell the real story of how your body is functioning. And with his guidance, I've been working one day at a time, 1 week at a time, to make real improvements in my health through diet, exercise, and other lifestyle changes. And as I dug in further into this, it became impossible to ignore how many of us are quietly struggling with the same thing. So I asked Lucy a couple of months ago. She had actually approached me, and it was perfect timing because I was already thinking about this. You know, I wanted her to come into the show and help us understand what's actually going on, especially for the women in my audience who face unique challenges in midlife that mainstream advice often misses. Lucy focuses on midlife women's health. And even though what she shares is going to be greatly customized for them, this advice really applies to everybody. So if you're a guy listening right now, please don't skip this episode. What you'll hear today is practical, it's simple, and surprisingly encouraging. Among other things, you're going to learn how long hours, stress, and irregular routines affect your key health markers, why midlife health, especially for women, doesn't follow the standard playbook, why fatigue, brain fog, and stubborn weight changes often are not really moral failings, but physiological signals, how to work with your doctor more effectively and ask smarter questions, and then simple, sustainable steps to start rebuilding your health without blowing up your life. If you've been feeling run down, low on energy, or feeling like you need to finally do something to sustainably improve your physical health, and let's face it, this time of year, many of us are asking ourselves these questions. I urge you to listen to the episode. I also want to encourage you to download Lucy's 5-day Writer's Reset Challenge. This is a really, really powerful resource. It's free and it's built for writers who want meaningful change without a complicated program because it focuses on very simple and doable lifestyle changes that you can start implementing today, right now. Finally, it goes without saying, before making any changes to your diet, your exercise, or health routines, always consult with a qualified medical professional. The information in this episode is for informational purposes only and should not be treated as medical advice. So with that, let's get to the episode. Lucy, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am excited to talk with you about this topic. This is a little bit different from the topics that I typically cover, but this is something that I've been thinking a lot about this year. And I think because we're at a point where many of us are starting to think about the year ahead and the changes we want to make, not just in our business, but in our personal life, and specifically, in many cases, our physical health, I wanted to bring you in and have a really good discussion that's targeted toward people like us who sit at a desk, we work alone, and we don't often, or sometimes we don't take as good care of our bodies as we probably should. So I'm excited to dive in, but before we get to the questions, why don't you give us a little bit of background? Tell us about yourself, what you do today, and maybe what got you to where you are now.
Sure. So I'm a nutrition coach, personal trainer, and kinesiologist, and I run Strengthsia, which is an online coaching program where I help women who, have been on and off diets for pretty much all of their lives, getting out of that cycle by, shifting their focus from getting smaller and skinnier to getting stronger and building muscle, which I think, in my opinion, is one of the most empowering things that a woman can do. And how I got here, I guess it's, the classic story of I'm doing everything right, but I still feel wrong. I worked in a corporate world for many years, ticking all the boxes and, being a high achiever, I overdid pretty much everything, including diet and exercise, which created a lot of stress in my body, led to a lot of health issues, so hormonal issues, gut issues, weight gain. And after many years of suffering, I finally, found what I needed to do to reverse all the damage. And then I decided that I wanted to coach other women do the same. So now I spend my days, teaching women how to fuel and train for muscle and strength and longevity, healing their relationship with food, repairing their metabolism, and really building a body that they love.
I love the sound of that. And especially right now, because here we are, we're recording this ahead of time, but this is dropping on New Year's Eve, a day when thousands of people and freelancers definitely start telling themselves, this is a new year. Everything is going to be different. It's going to be a new me. We start setting goals and New Year's resolutions. But let's face it, by about the third or fourth week, many of us have abandoned those, especially the really hard ones like diet and exercise. So as someone who works with very busy, self-employed, high-achieving professionals, women particularly, what do you see as the biggest mistake people are making with their health resolutions at the beginning of the year?
Well, I think the biggest mistake is that we are sold a lie and then we believe it year after year. The real problem is the new year, new me fantasy, because you're trying to build a life for a fantasy person who has, endless time and endless energy and suddenly think that she likes doing burpees, but that person doesn't exist, especially on a Tuesday at 5 p.m. when you have 3 deadlines and a sick child. So, if you look at the reality of most freelancers today, like you have stress on top. So you have deadlines, you have the anxiety of having your own business, you have AI breathing down your neck, you're desk bound, you're probably not sleeping enough. And so you're starting 2026 with your baseline already in the red. So that if you add on top of that, those big, all or nothing goals, like I'm going to cut out sugar completely, or I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week, then, that strategy is designed to fail. And as you said, by week 3, it does.
It really does. I know, especially here, and I know you're in Australia, one of the things that we have to face here in the Northern Hemisphere is that it's typically cold.
Yeah.
The days are short And it's so hard. It's extra hard to get motivated
It is.
also in early January.
Yeah, that's the time when you tell yourself you're going to do all those incredible things. And, that never happens.
It is so cold outside. Even getting in the car to go to the gym, let alone a walk or a jog. Yeah, it's really hard. I want to kind of take a different approach to our conversation here, because I think many times for a lot of people, they're sometimes more motivated by the impact their health can have on tangible things like their performance, especially their performance at work, their alertness, their energy levels, than they are about things that feel less tangible, like other metrics. So let's talk a little bit about what's at stake here. When a freelancer is dealing with that classic mid-afternoon crash, where they just start losing all their energy, how is that actually showing up in their work quality and their ability to produce results for themselves, for their business?
Yeah, I think this is all like much bigger than just feeling a bit blah by, mid-afternoon. When you have that slump in the afternoon, it really means that your blood sugar levels are out of whack, and that hits your brain hard. So that's when, you'll start noticing that your, thinking gets slower and you can't focus, and you might be like staring at that, blinking cursor. And then all of a sudden, an article that should take you 1 hour to write takes you 4 hours. So you can see how that, directly impacts your work. But, there's not just that, but also when you're like hunched over all day over your computer, that is, not just that sore neck. It's that constant low grade distraction from like your work. And that can become like real pain that if you don't do anything about it, that, might prevent you from sitting in your chair for long hours and, produce the work that you're supposed to be delivering. There's almost many, I should say, freelancers that don't sleep well at night. You have racing thoughts. You can't switch off your mind. All of that impacts your work as well, because you are going to be, less focused and have less energy the next day. And also, creativity is, sleep is very important for creativity. So you might end up writing stuff that is not up to your standards. So, really higher rates or like being successful in your business comes down to, constant quality, really. That's what your clients want. And you can't have constant or consistent, I should say, quality in anything if you have, dysregulated sleep, dysregulated blood sugars, if you have pain in your body, and if you're not fueling your brain properly so it can function properly. So really your physiology is directly linked to your business, your creativity, and your bottom line. So, that's why it's important even for those reasons.
That's a really good point, because I think if you're finding hard to get motivated enough to start with a new program or some new goals, because you've been traditionally looking at it as just my physical health, which kind of feels abstract. But then if the idea of being able to produce better, higher quality work and be more creative,
yes,
if you see that it impacts that and you notice the direct impact, for many people and many personalities, that can be very motivating. That can be the spark that at least gets them started. And then once they get started, they realize, oh no, but it's also impacting these other things that I couldn't get myself to do.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the sleep one is a big one. I just recently, and I've heard this from two different sources, I've been meaning to look into it, be curious what your thoughts are on this, but I read that if you have a poor night's sleep, just one night, for whatever reason, maybe you couldn't fall asleep because your mind is racing, and then when you woke up at 3:00 in the morning, then it started racing again, that the next day you're actually insulin resistant.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Insulin resistant.
Yes, everything.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, it's like the impact of lack of sleep, just even a few hours. People don't realize it's huge. Like you're gonna be way more insulin resistant. You're gonna have cravings. Pretty much everything you're going to eat is going to be like your body is going to be in a like fat storing mode instead of fat burning mode. You're going to be tired. It's insane. Like it's such like sleep is so important. People don't realize in this, the way we live today, where we just crawl up until bedtime and, we go to bed late and like we're always hustling and we think it's cool to be a hustler. Well, yes and no, because if your, sleep is impacted, that has really such a huge impact on everything.
Isn't that crazy? That's this cascading effect that just on something as simple as sleep. So we're not just talking about getting on a treadmill. Sometimes some of these things are just basic sleep hygiene.
That's right.
And setting up the conditions that, where you can have that quality sleep. So you had mentioned that your audience is women, and I believe 35 to 55 is typically the clients you work with.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about women over 40 and what's happening physiologically that makes the old strategies, kind of the mainstream strategies that are put out there, stop working. So why does everything suddenly feel harder, even when they've been doing a lot of the same things, than following the general advice?
Yes, I'm very passionate about this because I'm in my 40s as well. So I know what it is, what it feels like. But yeah, basically when a woman get to her 40s, the rules of the game completely change, and no one warned us. So it's called perimenopause, and it's when your hormones are, to keep it simple, mostly estrogen and progesterone, start playing musical chairs. So they don't just nicely decline in a gentle way over time. They're like all over the shop for years, and that can last sometimes up to 10 years. I'm not talking menopause. I'm talking the years before. So that is a long time to be in that hormonal chaos, but most women don't even know that's a thing. And some doctors, even if you go to them, they don't even know what perimenopause is, but it is very real. And, one of the main things, so there are so many things, and I can't get into the details for everything, but the main thing to remember is that you become way less resistant to stress. So, like a deadline that felt like nothing before becomes like this big fire alarm in your body, which wrecks your sleep, drains your energy, and kind of tell your body to hold on to fat. So that's the main thing to remember as a woman in your 40s, is that because as women, we're used to, most of us, doing everything for everyone, and it's hard to accept that needs to change. It's hard to accept for us, for ourselves, but also for the people around us, that we need to chill more. It is very important, because another thing that happens is that we become more insulin resistant. Just because we get older. So it's very unfair, but that's, what it is. And so, that is also depending on cortisol and stress. So that's why it's important to be less stressed for that as well. But what it means is that, for example, your toast for breakfast habits that you've had for years now directly leads to that 3 p.m. crash that we mentioned, and, the fatigue and the craving and the weight gain that go with it. So, again, that means that what you used to do in terms of eating, has to change a little bit. And then we talked about sleep. Sleep becomes very, much lighter in perimenopause. So it's very, common for women to wake up at 3 a.m. with racing thoughts, a racing heart, and for no apparent reason. And then, there's so many other symptoms, but one that is also important when you're a writer is brain fog. Brain fog is a huge one for women in their 40s. And you can see how all of this really impacts your work as a writer, and why, what you used to be doing, eating less, exercising more, doesn't work, because it's adding more stress to your new biology, which is very, very sensitive to stress. So, it sounds a bit, doom and gloom, but it doesn't have to be. There's definitely things you can do, but you need to know what to tweak in your nutrition, your exercise, and your lifestyle, because really your biology is different now and requires a different strategy.
And we're going to talk about some of those things which apply not just to women in their 40s, but I think can benefit everybody, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
We're going to get into that, but that's important. I'm glad you said that. Now, listen, I'm just curious. I'm very ignorant about this, okay? But when you talk to women in their 40s, how aware are they of this? Is this like because I would think that it would be kind of common knowledge, but I'm kind of getting the impression that it's really not.
No, I mean, it's getting better because the menopause, scene is getting more, people are hearing about it more and they're talking about it more. So with that, perimenopause is kind of following along. But no, many, many women don't know what it is. So they're suffering in silence with all these symptoms. Women tell me that I don't know who I am anymore. I don't recognize myself, because it's not just your body. It's your mind. You become very angry for no reason with your loved ones. And there's so many things. I have on my website, something about with all the symptoms. It's a very long list of symptoms that are linked to perimenopause, and women don't know, and they just, suffer in silence, and that, right. So we need to be talking about this more.
It sounds like maybe part of the confusion might be that they didn't think that would happen until their 50s during actual menopause.
Yeah, that's exactly right. People think, okay, I'm not a woman. And then when I get to my 50s, I have menopause, which is, hard enough. But they don't understand that for, almost sometimes 10 years, because it can start as early, not everyone, thank God, but as early as 35. That's when things start to change and, you can start having some symptoms. And because it doesn't happen like, overnight, all of the symptoms at once, it's very hard. Like, that's why people don't, connect the dots very often.
Got it. Okay. We're going to get into some specific strategies here. But before we do that, I just want to point something out. I really appreciate the fact that you have some very practical strategies here, which again, can have a very positive impact even on men, on everybody. This is a human thing, not just a woman thing. One of the things that I really like, though, is that you're advocating for incremental improvement rather than big, dramatic resolutions that, like you said, all or nothing. Mm-hmm. You're talking about controllable levers, essentially, right? And micro habits, kind of taking this idea that, you can do. I love the James Clear attitude of, look, just work on improving 1% every day. It's a concept. It's not really necessarily a practical thing. I've kind of changed that a little bit to 1% every week, because I think that's kind of a longer window. But as long as you're dedicated, in reality, what happens is it might be like this week I implemented something or I started doing something that's actually 5% better. Mm-hmm. And then the next week might be nothing. I'm just continuing that. But the whole idea is that you're talking about micro habits, micro improvements. So can you walk me a little bit through that philosophy? Why do small, repeatable habits rather than, big moves, big goals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, a goal is like your destination, right? But, so like, for example, your New Year's resolution of losing 10 kilos is that big, vague goal, but it doesn't tell you how to get there, except motivation and willpower, all that sort of stuff that doesn't work and usually abandons you by mid-January. So instead of relying on motivation, I like to build systems, because systems are like the road that gets you to that destination. And good systems are built upon a series of micro habits that are so small that you can actually see yourself doing them even on your worst day. So for example, as a writer, there are things you can't control, like the economy or your client's budget. But I'm sure that you've put your own, I call them controllable levers, your own things in place to help you to get to your, financial goal or business goal. Stuff that you do every day now that's part of your work and you're consistent with them and it helps you to get to your goal. So it's the same thing with your health. So for example, if you've been telling yourself, I want to go to the gym in the morning, but you never go because you snooze, then, like a small controllable lever that you could put in place is putting your bed on the other side of the bedroom at night. So when, in the morning, you have to get out of bed and you don't snooze. And then once you're up, then you just go to the gym. This is like a small habit that you put in place that would get you closer to your goal of losing 10 kilos. So it's very tiny, because people tend to, people want great, but you have to master average for a while and then good before you get to great. Because the issue with the big ambitious goals is that they set you up to fail. And, once you've failed a few times, you start telling yourself a story like, see, this is too hard. This is not for me. I'm not a healthy person. And that story becomes your identity. Whereas when you have like the micro habits, they are like the smallest controllable levers that you can use to change that identity, because they're so tiny that you can't, like, you don't fail. So you just get those small wins every day. And that, you start telling yourself, oh, look, I'm someone who keep their promises to themselves. And, over time that builds confidence and momentum. And then that micro habit becomes second nature. And then from there, you can layer on another one, and that's how really you build a new identity over time for yourself.
Yeah, I've seen that play out in my own life, in that what you do, you start really small, but then you start seeing the pattern and the fact that you're being consistency. And that feeds my identity, because I want to be seen or think of myself as someone who does what they say they're going to do, someone who's consistent. So then that gives me new motivation, new fuel to keep going, which increases not just my track record, but also now I'm starting to see results in my performance.
Mhm.
So that adds even more fuel. And
Yes.
it's just a virtuous cycle of success. So
Yeah, and
I'm a
yeah,
huge believer in that.
yeah, and you need to start small for this to happen. Like that's
Sure.
exactly what you described. If you had started with a huge goal, you would have failed, and then that all of these, nice things would have never happened, and you will be stuck again. That's why it's very important to start small.
I'm totally on board. So why don't you walk us through the 5 micro habits that you share with your women clients all the time? And we'll just go through them one at a time. And, you can basically tell us how it works, why it works, and how you can get started.
Sure. Yeah. So the first one is sunlight before screens. Because if you think about the default for most of us, so the alarm goes off, we roll over, we grab our phone, and the first thing that hits our eyes is the blue light from our phone with all the notifications and, calendar reminders and all of that stuff that come with it. And we're pretty much, telling our brain this is stress time before our feet have even touched the floor. So instead, what we want to be doing is getting natural sunlight on our face first thing in the morning. So as, early as possible after we wake up for like 10 to 15 minutes. So obviously you don't want to be staring at the sun because that's bad for your eyes, but you do want that natural light to hit your, the receptors in your eye area. So you don't want to be wearing sunglasses. And what that does is it's telling your brain to get the, get up and go hormones firing so that you have energy and focus during the day when you need it. But it also sets the timer for melatonin production. So, that morning light is actually the best thing you can do for your sleep, that night. So it's a very small thing, but it is very powerful. And it also actually improves insulin sensitivity. So you'll have, less cravings during the day. So, it helps with, weight loss and all of that. So yeah, it is, again, like such a small thing, but it has a huge impact on your health and on your focus and how you can do your work during the day. So yeah, try it. And I know you are in probably like it's winter for you. So it's maybe gloomy and dark in the morning, but you can use those light therapy lamps that they're not very expensive and they do exactly the same. And then you just, spend 10 minutes with that in your face and then you're good.
Okay. That was my first follow-up question. Right now, we're not getting sunlight until 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. I'm an early riser. I guarantee you that I'm looking at a screen first before 8 o'clock. So
exactly.
You're suggesting there is, and I've seen these. You can get them on Amazon.
Yeah, that's right. And I would really, I don't have a ton. I'm not a biohacker. I don't have a few, toys, but I'm not. When you can use natural things, it's better for sure. But that thing, I think, really is, could help a lot of people having those lamps for those months when it's dark because it really makes such a huge difference.
And just to be clear, when let's say that it is a time of year where you can get sunlight when you do get up, are you suggesting go outside and actually, experience it? Or can you be in a room by a window?
Yeah. So, ideally, obviously, the best thing to do would be to go out and walk for 10 minutes, with sunlight in your face. The second best one is, sitting on your balcony and drinking your water, or your tea, whatever. And then otherwise, being next to a window is way less powerful. It's been studied. It does help a little bit. It's better than nothing for sure. But ideally, you want to be outside. So at least, sitting on your porch or, on your balcony.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So that's number one. What's the second one?
Second one is water before Wi-Fi. So, most people don't realize that even very mild dehydration, like we're talking 1% to 2% of your body weight, can really decrease your focus and increase anxiety and mental and physical fatigue. And it can also be mistaken for hunger. So if you are well hydrated, you're going to have less, mid-morning snack attacks. You're going to be able to be sharper for longer. So, you can write for more than 45 minutes at a time, which, when you're a writer, that's helpful. So again, a very simple thing, but most people don't do it. If you drink your coffee, if the first thing you drink is coffee or you're having your breakfast right away or whatever, it's really not great for your body. So what I tell my clients usually is to get 500 milliliters, which is 16 ounces, I think, of water next to your bed the night before. So that's the first thing that you see when you wake up. So obviously you can, brush your teeth or use the toilet first, but you really want to put that water into your system before anything else. So especially for coffee, which is very dehydrating. And I love my coffee. I'm not saying coffee is bad, but you want that water first. And it's really going to help your energy levels and your digestion. And then during the day, having a 32 ounces bottle on your desk that you see all day. Yeah. Yeah, you have one. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's exactly 32. 32
yeah, it's the
ounces,
same. Yeah, mine is the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very helpful because you see it all the time. So if I don't have it, I honestly forget, so I need to have it with me. And then my aim is, 2 refills before the end of the day.
Got so 2 additional refills.
Yeah, 2 additional.
Or 1. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, you need more water than you think.
Interesting. One thing that I started doing a few years ago, which I have never regretted, was to start my day with, my 32 ounces. And I put in a packet of electrolytes. I love Element.
Oh my God, same. Yeah.
The Element electrolytes is fantastic. It does 2 things for me. First of all, it tastes great. I love the taste. Number 2, I feel the difference within 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Number 3, it does suppress hunger. Mm-hmm. I have found, so I can actually extend when I have my first meal. And number 4, this has been a more recent one. I've been reading that I know this is going to sound sacrilegious, you should put off your first dose of caffeine as much as possible, ideally after at least 1 hour after you wake up. So not early, because it does give your body the ability to wake up on its own without needing the caffeine.
Yeah, that's really good. And, see, I have electrolytes in here as well. So there's 2 things. Electrolytes, yeah, absolutely. Water on its own is obviously great, but it's very often lacking the minerals, in the water that we have. And so you're drinking, but you are peeing it out, really. So sometimes it's not enough to hydrate you. So electrolytes really with the minerals really helps your cells to, get all that water, and you really get the true hydration. If you don't want to, spend money on electrolytes, you can add a pinch of salt, good quality salt, not too much that you don't taste the salt, obviously, but just a little bit helps. So that's one thing. And the coffee, like in the morning, that's when your cortisol is high, which is normal because it's one of the things that helps you wake up. And it's not, cortisol is not bad. We need cortisol. What we don't want is cortisol, chronically elevated. So when you add coffee on top of it, that is too much cortisol. That's why it's good to wait a little bit. And I usually try to have coffee after my breakfast, because coffee on an empty stomach, again, especially for women in perimenopause, that is too much stress on the body. So, having your water, your breakfast, and then coffee is really ideal, especially for women.
Interesting. I did not know that. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. What's the third one?
The third one is protein first mindset. So what I mean by that is when you sit down to eat, the first thing you want to think is, where is the protein coming from? And if you cannot point at it, then you have a problem and you need to rethink your meal. Because ideally, if you look at a plate, you would like your plate to be half of the plate vegetables, a quarter, so it's roughly a pound size portion of protein, and then the other quarter is like your good carbs like sweet potatoes and rice and sourdough bread, that sort of stuff. And then you want to add some fat source like avocado, olive oil, those things. But the protein is really it's your antidote to the sugar craving, the 3 p.m. crash. It's going to help with, if you're trying to lose weight, that helps a lot because it helps with satiety. It helps, keep muscle. And as we get older, and especially again, women, we really need to hold on to our muscle because it is so important for our health. So all of that, protein does all of that. And it is particularly important for breakfast. I'm really not a fan of skipping breakfast, again, especially for women in their 40s. When you're a man, it's a bit different. But again, because we are so sensitive to stress now, skipping breakfast is one of the worst things you can do. So you want to start with, 30 to 40 grams of protein for breakfast. And honestly, again, if you're a woman in your 40s and you only remember one thing from this podcast, make it this, because I've seen it over and over and over and over with all the women that I work with. First of all, women don't eat enough protein. Like that's just how it is.
I don't think even men don't eat. I just found out this year that I was under consuming protein.
Really? Wow. Yeah. See? Yeah. And it's usually even worse for women, but yeah, it's everyone. And so, and also women really need it for, as I say, muscle and hormones. Like it is so important. And as we get older, we need more and we usually eat less. So, and when you think that 2 eggs, it's only 12 grams of protein and you
It's
need
not
30
much.
40 grams. Yeah. So you see how people have been doing breakfast wrong for so long. And it really is the meal that is going to set the tone for the rest of your day. And really, I can't stress enough how it will change your life if you start doing that.
I'm curious what your take is on, since we're talking about breakfast, intermittent fasting. I don't want to take us down that path too much, but for people who are trying to just restrict their eating window, and specifically women, is it something you recommend, or do you think it's more important to get that breakfast in earlier in the day?
Absolutely, breakfast more important. I did intermittent fasting, I'm not going to lie, and I felt great until I didn't. And that's very often the problem with, that. And it's not a no for everyone, like especially for men, again, that is a different story. But for women, if you do it, you need to be very good at listening to your body, because if you're already stressed, if you are in the second part of your cycle, or if you're still cycling, if you're doing a lot of exercise, if you feel like you're not recovering properly, if you're not sleeping enough, this is not the time to do intermittent fasting. But that's sort of like the daily life of most women. So, it is, and I don't mind like giving some time to the, digestive system to rest. So I prefer skipping dinner if I have to do something, which I know is a bit hard when you're eating with your family. And, I know in America, it's the most important meal of the day, but, either skip dinner or ideally just eat dinner a bit earlier, and you try to have like up to 14 hours without food at night is fine. More than that, it can really backfire after a while.
Okay. So that's good to know. Good to know. And the protein, do you have a general rule of thumb, the formula that women can use based on their weight, what they should be aiming for, at least a range?
Yeah, I actually have like something on my website again that you can download, and then you get that custom number for yourself. In general, because it's based on your weight, your age, if you're vegan or not. So there are a few different things, but let's say aim for at least 100 grams per day. But that is really the minimum. And the idea is to build up to 120, 130. And again, the older you get, the more you need, which, is not super handy. And because sometimes you have, you're less hungry or whatever, but you need more protein. So yeah, I would say minimum 100 grams per day, but that is really your minimum. Like 120, 130 would be ideal for most.
What's crazy is I wasn't even getting 100 grams a day, and I'm a guy and I'm a big guy.
Yeah, and you need more.
So,
Wow.
Yeah. So it's made a huge difference. And some have to supplement, with the amount of protein that I need to be consuming. I get it from natural sources, but I still have to supplement with powder. So that's really good to know. What's the next micro habit?
The next one is exercise snacks. So this is, because we need to stop thinking about exercise as these, 1 hour, twice a week events. Like, your DNA wants you to move. Like, we're not meant to be professional paperweights for 8 hours a day. Like, that's not how we're meant, like our body are meant to be. So exercise snacks, when we talk about that, it's not about getting shredded or getting sweaty. It's about interrupting the sitting pattern. So, they are like very micro movement that you'll feel like, well, that is not going to do anything to me. But they've been studied and they really do improve your fitness. They improve insulin sensitivity and they reduce your all-cause mortality risk. So it's pretty cool for such like a brief, easy thing to do, because we're talking about, little things like doing 20 squats every time the kettle boils, for example, or doing 10 desk push-ups while ChatGPT is thinking, or deciding that you're going to take all your calls standing, or getting a walking pad and walking a few times during the day. Like, it's been studied, and only just 30 to 60 seconds, 5 to 6 times a day is enough to have, that incredible results that I mentioned previously. So, again, it's not about the workout. It's not a workout, but it's about interrupting, the sitting. So you are breaking that stagnation. You are flushing your body with fresh blood. You are, sending oxygen to your brain. So that clears brain fog and increases focus. It also stops that, hunching, because you have to get up and do things. So it is very, again, like such a small thing, but it has a huge impact.
Very interesting. I never knew that those little micro exercise snacks, I love that term, exercise snacks. I never knew that they made a difference. The only thing that I had started to do a few months ago was after dinner, go take my dog for just a 10-15 minute walk, just to blunt the insulin spike. But I never, that's still 10-15 minutes. And we live in a very hilly area. So you definitely, get a little bit of workout. But I never thought about, so instead of going to, watch or to read the news when ChatGPT is thinking, I just get on the floor and do 10 push-ups.
Exactly. And, obviously walking after meals is amazing. And that's sort of like the next step for me because it takes a bit more time, as you said. But that is, fantastic for insulin resistance and improving, how your body disposes of glucose and stuff like that. But for people who are not there yet, doing that, and I'm an all or nothing person, I'm trying to be better at it. So at first I was the same. I was like, I'm not going to do this. This is nothing. I need to be sweating at the gym. But I've read the studies. It really works. And then it becomes so easy, every time you go to the bathroom, then you do 10 squats, whatever works for you. And, even after you've eaten, walking obviously is amazing, but you can even just do, those calf raises while you're seated at your computer. That really helps how the glucose disposal in your body as well. So those things really have a huge impact.
Oh, you've inspired me to try that. I'm going to create, I think what I'm going to do for that is create some sort of alert or reminder. I need, of course, we're getting the habit development here. You need that trigger, right?
Yes.
Or the first law and behavior change, make it obvious. So I'm thinking about it now, but I need to find some way. And I might start with a very simple thing. Like you said, while the kettle is boiling or while this is happening, I'm going to do this other thing.
The habit stacking that James Clear talks about, that really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Good stuff. Okay. Really like that one. Let's talk about the last micro habit that we had on our list.
So the last one is nervous system resets. So, the same way we have those exercise snacks, you want some sort of, nervous system regulation snacks because we're all very stressed and that is very much needed and no one really cares about that. So, for example, before you have a client call or before opening a scary email or whatever, you want to take, so ideally 3 to 5 minutes, but sometimes it's not possible. And 1 minute is already very good. Like, don't think, I just have 1 minute, I'm not going to do it. No, because 1 minute is really impactful. But you want to be doing some deep breathing exercise. So I really like the 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out as a breathing pattern because it's been studied to, calm anxiety and stress. So you want to be doing that. And ideally a few times during the day, the same thing as the exercise snacks. So, before every high focus or high stress task. And what you're doing, you're actually proactively calming your nervous system before reacting to things and potentially regretting it.
I started doing the 4 in, 8 out.
Okay, nice.
That's a new thing for me, and it makes such a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think it activates your, is it the parasympathetic system?
Yes, that's right. Because when the exhale is longer, it activates the parasympathetic system. But what you can do if you like this one is one that I love as well is 4 seconds in, hold it for 7 and out for 8. Yeah, that is amazing as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a long time. Okay.
Yeah, but that you build up to it and it's
4, 7, 8.
Yeah, 4, 7, 8. It's really good. Yeah.
I will try that. There are a few points in the day, and that's a really good piece of advice before you're going to go into a call where maybe you're a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous. There's, you're about to discuss something that is causing you some stress, or even after as well.
As well.
Calm yourself back down.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just 1 minute, again, that seems like nothing. But, it's like if we always wait until we have 30 minutes to meditate, that's never going to happen. And we're going to live in that stress all the time. Whereas if you can do 1 minute, a few times during the day, then you're actually you're already doing stuff for your nervous system and you're improving that. And you'll see the benefits after, a while, because like everything, you need to do it, consistently. But again, it really works, even though it's so small.
I've been doing it in the car when I'm in traffic.
Yeah.
That's really works.
Good time to do it.
Absolutely. Okay. This is really good. I want to kind of do a callback. We started talking earlier about this idea you mentioned that, if you're relying on your motivation, that's really not a good source of fuel, so to speak. It's unreliable. And I know this to be true, but do you have any ideas or some very practical suggestions on how we can actually make these habits stick? So what's your framework for turning these micro habits? These are great ideas into more automatic behaviors that are going to survive this period where most people just abandon their resolutions and their goals.
Yes. Yeah, because, as you said, like motivation, because it's a finite, people don't realize that motivation and willpower is a finite resource. So it would never last long enough to get you to your goal. So that's why we can't rely on this. And that's why you need systems based on those micro habits. But a few things to make those stick is, first of all, to make it easier, you want to change your environment. So you want to make the healthy choice the easiest possible. So, the water next to your bed that I mentioned earlier, that's a way for you to every morning, that's the first thing you see. So you don't forget about your water, it's there. Something that I do personally is I always get my gym bag and my outfit ready the night before, and it's all laid out. So in the morning, it really helps,
I have to do that. If I have to go in the closet and start touching,
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a risk. There's a risk. I might just not do it.
And what we want to avoid is that risk, of that day where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm not, so you want to avoid friction as much as possible. That's why you need to make the healthy choice the easiest possible. Another thing more for like the nutrition part is, if you can put the biscuit jar on a higher shelf, so you don't have that temptation every time you walk past the pantry that you can just grab a biscuit because it's, out of sight. That sort of things that you can, look at your environment and think, what can I do to make the healthy choice the easiest possible? So that's one thing. The other one is, what you mentioned earlier, actually, tying in your new habit to an event that's already there in your calendar. So you put that new habit as something in your calendar, like a meeting. So you can't say, oh, I forgot about it, or I don't have time for it, because it's already scheduled in there. And you want to, again, the habit stacking thing, you want to tie it in with something else. So for example, you could be doing your exercise snack every time, like before every, first draft. I don't know how you guys work, but you know what I mean? Or doing like drinking 2 glasses of water after every admin task, that sort of thing. So, putting it in your calendar and tying it to something that's already there is very helpful. Another one is having your worst day standard. So, let's say that you've built up to doing 5 exercise snacks per day, which is great. But that some days are just crazy and that's not going to happen. You want to have your worst day standard. Worst standard. So on those days, you don't drop the ball completely. You have, like your standard, which is maybe once. You just do it once instead of 5 times. But, you keep that streak. You don't drop the ball. And what it does, it keeps, reinforcing that identity that we talked about. So it seems, again, like nothing. What is it? Like, well, I'm going to do 20 squats a day. That was nothing. Well, no, it does. It, reinforces that identity that you're working on. So that's very important. And the last thing is a rule that I really love is never twice in a row. So, you're human, you're going to skip a day, that's fine. But the goal should be to never let it slide twice. So, let's say that you forget to eat your protein this morning, then you want to recommit immediately at the first opportunity. So that might be that at lunchtime, you're going to eat more protein, or that tomorrow you're going to make everything that you can to have your protein, Because when you, skip a day, that's fine. It's just, a blip. But once it starts to be 2 days in a row, it can become the start of a new bad habit, and you just let it slip. And we don't want that. So I really like this rule.
Yeah, James Clear has a quote, something to the effect of, if you skip one day, it's a mistake. If you skip the second day, it's the start of a new habit.
That's right. Exactly. That's how,
it's so true.
Yeah, because you think, oh, come on, it's just 2 days. But it then becomes 5, 10, and then, the thing is gone. It's so easy. We need to be very vigilant. That's why we need those little things to help.
Yes. And I'm with you 1,000% on the habit stacking. And just to make this clear for everybody, habit stacking can sound a little confusing, but it's not at all. It's essentially, you look where you're already doing a certain series of things. And this is everybody. Everyone's doing these things throughout the day. They don't have to be related to the thing you're trying to develop. It could be like, okay, I go to the bathroom when I wake up, and then I brush my teeth, and then I go downstairs and start making coffee. Okay. So when you're done making the coffee, you do this new thing.
That's
right.
right.
So you're essentially piggybacking on a sequence that you already have in place.
Yes.
And it's just been proven over and over again that when you do that, as opposed to starting in isolation, the results are drastically better.
Absolutely.
Because you're tagging on to something that's already there.
You're already there. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So that's brilliant. These are really, really practical. I guess one more follow-up question before we start closing out. I like all 5 habits, but do you recommend that people try to start employing all of them at once? Or are you more of a fan of trying to get one in place at a time?
Yeah, one at a time for sure, because that's, the best way to actually stick to it. And, again, making it second nature, And so you do one habit. And I don't know if we're going to talk about it, but the challenge that I want to share with people.
Yes.
So for 5 days, every day you try one of those micro habits that we discussed today. But then at the end of the 5 days, you see, okay, which one was easy enough that I can see myself doing even on my worst day. And that's the one that you're going to commit to for 28 days. But you just do this one. And I know you can feel, maybe, I can do both. I can do the water and the sun and, but yeah, it feels that way. But then eventually at some stage, it's going to be a crazy day and you're not going to be able to do the 2 things. And then you're going to drop one. And then maybe, and again, you were losing that constant win that we're after. So it's really, I know it seems too simple, too little, but believe me, that's how it works. You want to just commit to one, the one that feels easy, easy-ish or the easiest of them all. You do it for 28 days. And then after that, you reflect, you don't just move on to the next. You think, okay, what has improved? What was easy, what got in the way. And then, once you've done that, then you earn the way to add a second micro habit on top of it. But yeah, it's very important to focus on one thing. Again, as I said earlier, you want to master average before you master good, before you master great.
That's a brilliant way of saying it. So I know you have this 5-day writers reset challenge, which I think is a brilliant idea. Can you walk us through what this is all about and what it involves?
Yeah, so it's very simple. It's the thing that you download, and as I say, it lasts 5 days, and you try every day a different habit. So you start Monday, you do the sunlight before screens, and then on Tuesday you do the water before Wi-Fi, and so on. And then at the end of the 5 days, you pick the one habit that you're gonna commit to for the next 28 days. And then one that becomes second nature, then you can add a second one. And there is a downloadable, habit tracker for people like me who like to, tick boxes for the dopamine hits. But yeah, That's very simple. And, then you can do it with any other habits that you want to try. You don't have to stick to those ones. But yeah, that's how it works.
I like that idea, just to kind of sample them all over a 5-day period and then pick the one that you're going to start with and commit to. And I like what you said, to do that reflection at the end, because I know for me and my personality, I tend to kind of move on really quickly and skip that step. But there's something really powerful about, first of all, patting yourself on the back for the things that did go well. It doesn't have to be perfect, but acknowledging what you did well, then seeing where you slipped and why, and then making some decisions as to what you'll do to improve that so that you're a little bit more consistent, or you can make it easier for yourself. So that's a really cool idea. I love challenges like this.
Great. But also because, something that we don't realize, that we very often notice what we do. So, what we do bad, for example, but we don't notice what we don't do anymore. So, you might have a bad habit of, I don't know, eating biscuits in the afternoon without even really thinking about it. And then you'll start eating protein in the morning, and then that habit disappears. But it's much harder to notice what has stopped than to notice what is there and is annoying, So when you do that reflection, that it helps to notice those little things that you've stopped doing, but you might not be noticing,
That's so true. So I'm going to make sure to include the link in the show notes to the challenge. And I love the way you structured it, because there's plenty of detail there. It's a PDF. Like you said, there's boxes you can tick. I work really well with that format. Where can listeners download this, or is it something that the URL off the top of your head, or should we put it in the show notes?
I think so. If I remember correctly. So it's strengthsia.com. So it's strengthsia.com/writer-resets. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll make sure to include it in the show notes. So for those listening, just make sure to click through that. I really think it's going to help you and to keep you on track. I think even with something as simple as this, it's important to have a guide in front of you because it's going to keep you on track. It's going to remind you of what each of these is, why you're doing it, how to make it work, how to make it consistent. So make sure to grab that. So Lucy, thank you so much. This has been really, really good. I learned a ton. And again, this is something that, of course, can help women over 40, but I think it can help any human at any age, including the guys. So thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And just a quick reminder to grab your free copy of my latest book, Earn More in Less Time: The Proven Mindset, Strategies, and Actions to Prosper as a Freelance Writer. You can get your free copy at b2blauncher.com, where you will also find the detailed show notes to this and all my other episodes. Enjoy and have a great day.